Hey YouTube, hey. So, Thrones, again, Game of Thrones. This is Season 6, Episode 2, Home. And this was a big ass episode, man. There's a lot to cover in this, so I'm just, again, I'm not going to do recaps of the whole episode. I'm only going to talk about the bits that I care about. And if this is not clear, spoilers! Light the spoiler beacons, as I am wont to say. Absolute spoilers from here on out. Okay, you've been warned. Let's start with the big one. Bran's back. Bran's back. Bran and Hodor, they're back in there. First of all, it's a flashback to Winterfell. We see childhood Ned, childhood Benjen. Remember Benjen? Jon Snow's uncle, went north of the wall, never came back. And their sister Lyanna, who's riding around on a horse and parading about. And he's like, oh, but Bran's back. He got a haircut. He's walking in the flashback with Max von Sydow, the three-eyed raven, you know, the guy from the start of Force Awakens, being the Merciless, that guy. And he's so good. And you know, he's a we also find out that Hodor, though still apparently still having giant's blood in him somehow, wasn't always Hodor. There was a time when he was a young boy, you know, a teenager or whatever, where he could talk in full sentences with other words, and his name was Willis, and he was a stable boy. You're like, what the what? And then, but he gets pulled away by Nan, not old Nan at the time, Nan, and it's a case of what? And it's almost sad. Whenever Bran comes out of the dream, he turns around, he's like, "What happened?" And Hodor just says, "Hodor." For a split second, I'm thinking, is he gonna say something else? He's like, "I can't talk about it," or something, you know, just like, yeah. But we're never gonna get that. If Hodor says something else, it'll be the end of the world. So that just. Forget about that. It's Max von Sydow is great. He has that excellent line where he's like, "The bottom of the ocean is beautiful, but if you stay there too long, you'll drown." And I'm like, oh, that's great. These memories, Bran will lose himself in them if he does it all the time. You know, you can only go in there so much. This show has always shied away from flashbacks, but as we get closer towards the end game, sort of things are ramping up, we need to know what's happened before, and this is a really clever storytelling device, which also reactivates a storyline that hasn't really had anything going on for a number of years. So that's cool. It's really clever how they've done that. So they're still hanging out in the tree, and then if we check out again Winterfell, oh my god, Winterfell. So yeah, so Ramsay Bolton, he gets the word that Sansa and Theon have escaped, and you know, the bodies hit the floor. They find it his men's bodies and the dogs' bodies, dogs' bodies. And it turns out, you know, Roose Bolton, the Maester comes in and says, "Hey, Roose Bolton, Lord Bolton, you've got a son." And he's like, "Ah, good stuff." And he goes up to Ramsay, he's like, "He'll always be my firstborn." Ramsay's happy to hear that until he stabs him in the gut. Now, this makes things much worse. Roose Bolton was a logical evil. He was a pragmatist. He had a plan. He understood alliances. He could play politics. He knew how it all worked. Ramsay is an out-and-out psychopath. In some ways, he's more dangerous than Joffrey. Joffrey was a coward with no redeeming qualities. This guy can fight unabrasively, and he's tactical. And he's not, I don't want to say a genius, but it was his plan to sack Stannis' camp in the middle of the night. And then, you know, he led the cavalry charge against them the next day. So, you know, yeah. So this guy's dangerous. Now he's Lord of Winterfell and Ward of the North, and immediately after committing patricide, which Roose Bolton kind of earned on himself by goading him, he takes his stepmother and the baby in one of the most tense scenes. Whenever you see him holding the baby, you're like, is he gonna break it over his knee? What is he gonna do? I actually couldn't watch that. I was watching it through my fingers. He gives it back and he's like, "Oh, little brother." And then he takes them down into the kennels and sets the dogs on them in Ramsay Bolton fashion. It's in keeping with the character. It feels less like the Game of Thrones method from last season, where we're just going to shock people now. That seems in keeping, and this seems dangerous, but I think there's a reckoning on the horizon here, as I'll get to in a bit. If we go across the sea, and then I'll touch on Arya briefly, because we don't really see Daenerys in this episode. Arya's, she's still blind, She's still a beggar. She gets beaten up again. She tries to defend herself, and then Jack in the car shows up and says, catch the stick. Says, listen, if the girl tells me her name, she'll get a bed for the night. A girl has her name. If the girl tells me her name, she'll get food. The girl has her name. If the girl tells me her name, I'll give her sight back. The girl has her name. So we don't know how long Arya was blind for in the timeline of the show. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell. This season picks up within minutes of Jon Snow dying, so it's hard to tell how much time has passed exactly in certain storylines. I don't think it's all happening at the same time, but seemingly she's passed this test. In the books, she's blind for like a chapter, but some time has passed within that chapter, so she's adapted without it. If she's going to be like a little Matt Murdock of Westeros, I'm on board with that. I'll take it. It's fine. Moving on, we'll go over to Meereen, because Meereen's a funny place. I mean, even in the books, it's odd. None of our characters are from there, but everyone seems to be stuck there, and it's just not a captivating place. In this instance, I left it out of the last week's video because, I mean, what happened was Tyrion and Varys walked down the street, and the ships that we were hoping they would use to go to Westeros are burnt. So if you were hoping that was going to happen this season, Tyrion's like, okay, well, the other cities are rebelling against us. We need to let the dragons out. They're like, that's not a good idea. I was like, no, it is, because if we keep the dragons indoors, they're going to lose their power. And he says there's an awesome line like, dragons don't do well in captivity. I drink and I know things, which I want on a T-shirt. But beyond that, he even more so than that, he goes down to the dragons, talks to them, convinces them, look, I'm the help. Don't need the help. Tells them this kind of bittersweet, heartbreaking story about how whenever he was a child, he just wanted a dragon for his name day. Didn't even have to be a big one. Look at him. And he releases the dragons. They don't eat him, which is them doing him a solid. And they just kind of shuffle off to the back of the cave. I'm assuming they've been released, but we don't see them get out of that tunnel. I mean... And then there's a nice buttoner on the scene where he goes back up to Varys and he's like, if I ever do something like that again, punch me in the face. And I'm like, that's, yeah. He seemed really cool, but he must have been pissing himself. What else am I talking about? I mean, before we get to the raison d'etre of this episode, let me see. Back in King's Landing, the only thing I'm going to touch on in King's Landing is whenever that guy was bragging about taking his dick out in front of Cersei Lannister. After he's finished his story, he's taking the piss, the mountain shows up and just bashes his head into the wall. I howled with laughter at that. I loved that. I loved that moment so much. Just so nonchalant, just so effortless. He's that strong. He can muster up that much force without a sweat. Just poof. Wall. Loved it. And then I guess I can't think of anything. Oh no! What the hell? No, Balon Greyjoy died. If we're going to talk about the War of the Five Kings, the last king that Melisandre threw a leech in the fire for died this episode. It's a pompous invasion that he's not going to let go. And then his brother in the books, who's called Euron Greyjoy. Now this guy's a badass. This guy is a mad pirate. He was banished years ago for something I can't remember exactly. He's been traveling the world, just living the pirate life. Been feared from every coast around here, and he's come back and he's like, now it's my turn to be king. I'm going to throw you off a bridge here. I'm good. Balon Greyjoy was a dick. This guy's also a dick, but he's kind of like Ramsay, a bit of a psychopath, a bit of a sociopath. We'll see what's happening. I think the reason they're reintroducing these guys is because they have a lot of ships. And we need some people to have ships. Now let's move on to the order of the day. Now, first of all, the episode opens up with the mini siege at Castle Black, where the door's going to be bust down, people are going to die until you hear a massive banging on the gate, and Dolorous Ed and a giant, the wildlings rush in, get everybody else to drop their weapons. The giant is amazing. Anytime 1-1 shows up, bashes down a door, a guy shoots him, and he's just like, I thought he was going to give him a dangerous look and the guy was going to cower. No, he looks at him, grabs him, smacks him into a wall, throws him off, and everyone else is like, alright, we're cool, bro. Let's just, let's all take a minute here. Alistair Thorne's like, attack. Even Ollie does attack, but it's done. So Davos convinces Melisandre, listen, give it a go. Let's try it. And you can hear her, whenever she does do this chant, this ritual, because obviously she knows this has happened before. She's seen it. Well, she hasn't seen it happen, but she's met somebody who's come back from the dead. She's seen it. She's spoken with the priest who does it, but he's not really invested in the faith. Thoros of Myr, if you remember back from season 3. And she starts chanting. It goes on. It's so protracted. It's so extended. That whole sequence. It's just so drawn out, and it's almost painful. It's like whenever somebody's using a defibrillator, and you're like, just stop. It's done. She chants, and Tormund Giantsbane storms off. Ed storms off. Melisandre is just like, there's nothing left. I've been wasting my life with this power. Davos has a little look, and he's just like, damn it. Just walks out silently. Ghost has been asleep under the table while all this is happening. And he just stirs, looks up, smells the air. Cut back to Jon Snow's face, and it's just and he just sort of gasps for air and stuff like that. And I love that. I mean, that's so gratifying. It's not a twist, it's a payoff. That's what it is first and foremost. That's what we wanted, and I'm so glad we didn't have 5 or 6 episodes of people standing around having conversations over Jon Snow's corpse, okay? You knew it was coming, I knew it was coming. It's done. It's fine, it's confirmed, he's alive. We can move on now, we can progress the story onwards. What's going to happen? That's the question now, is like, what's his mindset? There, in the books, 2 people have been resurrected this way. One has come back and has been sort of okay, but he loses a bit of his conscious, a bit of his memory each time he comes back. Another one has been much more bloodthirsty, but I don't know if we're going to get onto that character. So, who is this Jon Snow? Who's this Jon that we've got back from the other side? That's the question now. I don't think he's going to be a brain-eating zombie. He's not a White Walker or anything like that. What I'm saying is, I don't know what we're going to get in this next episode. I cannot wait. We've got Jon Snow back. What happens next? So those are my thoughts on the episode 2 of season 6 of Game of Thrones. If you like this vid, please click like, subscribe, view, share, and all the usual jazz. And I will see you next week. Yeah.